You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Well, hello, friends. My guests today are Amy and Nancy Harrington. You may have heard of their community, the Passionistas. And in this episode, I'm going to talk with them about making the decision to build a business with a sibling and also choosing community as a business. So as a note before we get too far, each episode of this show is delivered in both audio and video on YouTube. Amy and Nancy are really used to talking over and with each other, but with three women, two with the first name Amy, I will give you a hint that you might want to watch this one on YouTube, but it's always up to you. Amy and Nancy Harrington, welcome to the Art of Imperfect Adulting. Are you ready for a fun chat, you guys?
Oh,
Yes,
can't
we
wait.
are.
Fantastic. All right, I use the same two warm-up questions in all of my conversations. Share with us what part of the world you guys call home.
We live in Los Angeles, California, but we are originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Well, Braintree, Massachusetts, south of Boston.
Very nice, very nice. And what is something that you guys love or enjoy about living in LA?
I love the fact that my birthday is in February and it used to get snowed out every year. Every party canceled because there was a storm. And now I can drive around with the windows open and go to the beach and have a nice lunch on my birthday.
Beautiful. I love that too. I love that too. All right, so we're going to start with a super easy question for you guys. Which of you is older and by how much?
I am older by 5 years.
All right,
And the
so
family,
that's a gap.
it's a gap, yeah. But we're the babies of the family of 5. There are 3 older than us.
All right, so
And we always
then
like to say we're twins separated by 5 years because we are. People always think we're twins and we are as close as twins, I honestly believe.
that's beautiful. Okay, so your other siblings, all brothers and sisters? Tell me more.
We have 2 older sisters and an older brother. So the brother's right in the middle. There are 5 of us all together. We're all extremely close.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so today you guys work together in business, and we're going to talk about that more in a minute. But I want to start by rewinding the clock and asking you guys what you did for careers professionally before you guys formed the Passionistas.
Yeah. So we were both in the entertainment world. Nancy was back in Boston. She had her own graphic design business and theater company. I moved out to LA right after college and got right into film and television. So I worked on a TV show called Matlock, the original Matlock. And then I rose up the ranks to become vice president of post-production and visual effects for Warner Brothers, the first woman in the history of the entertainment industry to hold that job, and worked on movies like the Harry Potters and the Matrixes. I finally convinced Nancy to come out and live in LA, and she started doing Academy Award campaign ads for Miramax. So we both had great careers in entertainment, but we finally decided that we wanted to leave and do something together.
That is all right. So we're going to talk about that. How long ago was that you guys made that decision?
We started working together in 2003.
Okay, 2003. All right,
And
very
it's
good.
very, very long and winding road.
So you guys described it. You said you're very close and that you're like twins that are separated by 5 years. I would love to take some time and talk about some of the other things that you guys have done together in the past. Like 5 years, were you ever in the same school together, on the same sports teams? Did you do lemonade stands together? Like, tell me about some of the things you did before this.
Yeah, the family folklore is that as a child at 4 years old, I ordered Amy. I requested to have my mother to have a baby
All right.
so that my mother would not be lonely when I went away to kindergarten. And several months later, Amy was born. So you do the math. I don't know. It's just folklore, but and we have literally been best friends ever since. So we did go to the same school together because we went to a Catholic school, grades 1 through 8. So when I was in fourth grade. Amy started first grade. So we were in school together for 4 years. It was a very tiny school and there were very little sports. So we were not on teams together.
And we're very uncoordinated.
And we're very young. We didn't really do sports. That's a whole other podcast to hear our sports adventures. But we just were best friends, and we were together all the time. We didn't have a lot of other kids in our neighborhood, so after school we played together. We board games, backgammon, cribbage all summer long. We swam in the pool together. You name it, we did it. I don't think we ever did a lemonade stand. I don't think
No.
yeah, we didn't have
We
that kind of
watched a lot of
neighborhood.
TV. That's
Yeah,
really what we did. We watched a lot of TV together.
yeah.
There, so now I was not going to ask the question because it would have been maybe crossing some lines. But when you said grew up outside of Boston, you said you were one of five kids. I was like, oh, I do wonder if this is a Catholic family.
Yes.
But it was just I grew up in a Catholic family also. So I
Yeah,
was like, oh, that's a lot of this that sounds familiar. All right, very good. So you guys
yeah.
say that you founded the Passionistas Project out of a deep desire to empower women around the world. And so the question I have about that is share with us a little bit about what was going on in your own lives. Like what experiences were you having or had you had that made you feel that this was something that the world needed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I came from the background, even though I was in the film and television industry, I was I was a studio executive. So I had come from a world where I was one of the only women, if not the only woman in the room all the time. So I grew up in a very patriarchal business structure and didn't really work with women very much. I had women that I hired because I always hired women. But when I went out of my office, I was surrounded by men. So, and that had a huge impact on me that maybe I still am working through all these years later. Things come up and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that bothered me. And Nancy had always been freelance, and Nancy predominantly worked with female clients her
Yeah.
whole life. So we came to it from very different experiences in that regard. The reason we started it is because we had a company called Pop Culture Passionistas, which is still our main uh, overlying company. But we were doing pop culture content and always from a really positive perspective. We were doing long-term interviews for the Television Academy and then also interviews for our own website. And we had wanted to do a podcast for a while, but we didn't really want to do a pop culture podcast. We didn't know what to do. And it was the height of the Me Too movement when we woke up one night and thought, we need to do a podcast for women that supports women. So it started as a podcast that grew into an annual Women's Equality Summit and then ultimately became the community. So we really were just trying to figure out ways to promote women to share stories of women's empowerment. And through that, we just met so many incredible women. We were constantly looking for ways that we could support them in doing what they were doing.
Very nice, very nice. So, yeah, raising the voices specific to pop culture Hollywood stories, raising the voices of women is something that is becoming more of a talked about thing. Reese Witherspoon and her studio. I think I would say that that's one of the more well-known celebrity examples of somebody coming out and doing that.
Yeah,
For sure. And
absolutely.
Gina Davis,
Gina Davis, Shonda Rhimes.
Shonda Rhimes,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah. So those are, and I mean, those are the celebrity examples. And so today, I mean, you're from the land of Hollywood, but would you describe what you're doing now as an indie podcast, an indie show?
Oh, absolutely. We really, every once in a while, we have a celebrity or a big name on the show, or interview in one of our summits. But for the most part, our real focus is shining the light on women who don't get the spotlight. So, as much as we admire all those women in the industry that are raising the voices, I mean, that's really important because it has to start from the top. they don't talk to the average everyday woman. So that's the hole we're trying to fill. We're really trying to put the spotlight on those women who don't get their voices lifted up, don't get to speak for themselves.
So yeah, this is something I feel and I resonate with and I talk about as much as I can, but I'm going to throw it back to you and give you a chance to talk about it a little more, because for people who are not thinking about that all day long, every day, and who may not realize it because they grew up in a system where this wasn't happening, you don't see what you're used to, right? Normal is a moving target. And so, talk a little bit more about why you are committed to that and why it's important to uplift and shine a light on regular women and their stories.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because we don't get the opportunity enough, right? In so many ways. And I should say that the Passionistas Project really makes it a point to focus on women from marginalized communities. And so that can be women of color or AAPI women, Indigenous women, but it's also women over 50 and women with disabilities and women of different body types. The women who are targeted in ways that may not seem as obvious or may not be as talked about you know, as you would like to think. So we, we also live in a world where women get 2% of the venture capital funding for their businesses, and women of color get even less than that. So, yeah, we always like to joke we've come a long way, baby, but we
Thanks,
have
Big
so,
Tobacco.
yeah,
Yeah.
but we've got so far to go. And especially in times like this where people are struggling with the economy and small businesses are trying to keep their head above water. A lot of the women in our community are entrepreneurs or they have 501(c)(3)s, and they're the first women to really get hit with these kinds of, financial impacts. And then there's, of course, all other kinds of women's equality issues that we could go on about for days and days and days. But, you know, for us, one of the driving factors is people always say to Nancy and to me when they meet us and they know what we do and they see us interacting, I really wish I had what you have. I wish that I had somebody that I knew was 100% in my corner, who I could rely on, who was there with me in the good times and the bad times. And we know so many women who are doing whatever they're doing 100% alone. And they get support from friends and family in that way that friends and family can be supportive, but not necessarily give you the tools that you need to succeed in whatever way success means to you. And so we thought, well, we can give that to women. We know how to be sisters. And so it's really not just about business networking. It's not just about opportunities for financial growth. It's really about feeling less alone and knowing that there are other women who get what you're going through and who are there to support you every step of the way.
All right, I love that. I too try and focus on telling stories from people who lived experience, people who are not already blessed with the celebrity limelight, just because, like you said, it's a story that's not often told, or not told as much as it is, but it's also a better match for what other real people are doing. So, like, back in the 90s, I'm a runner by hobby, and Runner's Magazine, which I don't even know if that's still out there, but Rodale used to publish Runner's Magazine, and they had a section that was like, they're just like us, and they would do celebrities running. And it was like, well, not really. Okay, like, I mean, there's a little bit of a difference between the schedules we keep, and what we're able to do. I mean, yes, we both put on shoes, but not really. So anyway, all right. So I want to talk to you about, you guys are partners, and sisters. And so on the one hand, right, businesses with co-founders are statistically much more likely to be successful. It's a statistic so significant in business that the folks at Y Combinator years and years ago came forward and said, we really only want to bring in people to our accelerator that have co-founders. So it's really well known. But on the other hand, Business partnerships can be tricky, and going into business with family members is so often a tricky thing that it is a trope in situation comedies, right? It's seen in scripts, like it's a punchline, right? So take me back. You guys are very, very close, and you have a very close family, which, maybe that lends itself to this, but why did you guys think that it was a good idea for you to go into business as siblings?
Yeah. I think Amy especially was at a point in her life where she was distrustful of people working with her. I was in a situation where some of my best friends were in the business I was working with, but also I did not trust several of the people I was working with. And so when it came time for us to make the move to leave that atmosphere, we really just wanted to work with the one person that we trust most in the world, and that's each other, literally. Like, I love my husband. I know Amy loves her fiance. I trust them impeccably, but I know 100% no matter what, Amy is there. Like, I've never been alone a day in my life. Well, once I was 5, once Amy was born. But we just are there for each other all the time, and I wanted that. And you spend so much of your life working, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, I don't want to be spending that time with people I don't like and I don't trust. So Amy and I don't have as much fun with anyone else on the planet as I do with Amy. So, we just really wanted to work together. And we joke that we're twins separated at birth, but we also joke that we share a brain. Like, we literally, you hear all the, oh, she completes my sentences and all that, but it's true. We have a like language that is unspoken, that we understand each other, and I can't think of anybody better to work with.
That's a very, very nice answer. I'm going to double down on that and ask you, because you said that you were both coming out of situations where there were trust issues with the people that you were working with. Talk a little bit more about what that felt like and what that means, because that's a word that probably means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you hear about Hollywood is true. It's a very competitive environment. It's a very self-serving environment in a lot of situations. So you don't really feel like people have your back much, and you don't, even the people that where you work with for years, if things shift and they need to protect themselves, they're going to protect themselves before they worry about how that's going to impact you. So I went through a situation where it was clear that, like, people that I had pretty much trusted for years, I felt like, oh, okay, I'm not the priority in this situation. I'm gonna, have to roll with a new kind of structure that didn't work for me. And so and I had, at that point, I had been things were getting a little redundant work-wise because we were making all these sequels. So even though I was on the cutting edge doing visual effects, it became a little bit repetitive on, like, how do you make a certain character fly, or how do you make water? It's like, well, we've done that before, and this is how we're going to do it again. So I was kind of getting bored with the innovation, even though it's obviously continued to be a very innovative industry. But it was really the politics that really made me want to leave. And Nancy just liked being a freelancer. Nancy liked having her own company. She's an entrepreneur at heart. So even though she was in a pretty good situation, it was like, yeah, I don't want to have a boss. So we both really just knew that it was time to do something for ourselves. And we did end up working for other people after that. And we had another business partner at one point. But at the core of it, it was always just about, how are we going to do this together? And it's been beautiful. We are the luckiest people on the planet.
So then what I'm hearing is, and I've heard this come up in other decisions, in other conversations, I'm sorry, where people talk about, they are working for somebody in a corporate setting, and the sense of security and stability no longer is as present. It's sort of an illusion that your job is guaranteed or your promotion is there or the recognition that for showing up, the what do we call it, the implied contract, like if you show up and you do a good job, you will be praised and you will be promoted. And many people sometimes realize that, oh, that doesn't always happen. It's a premise or a promise that doesn't always appear. Okay, so then you guys seem pretty sure about it. I'm curious whether or not in your social circles, in your extended family, did anybody around raise any concerns like, well, I don't know, every once in a while this doesn't work out when brothers and sisters and fathers and sons and mothers and daughters go into business together?
There were some concerns. First of all, I should say our father was an entrepreneur and business owner. So our entire lives, we were raised by an entrepreneur. So it was a more natural thing for us. It wasn't that unusual. And our parents were very, very supportive and really encouraged us to follow our dreams. So other than the 3 years that I worked at the ad agency when I first moved to LA, I've always been self-employed. I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had my own business. So when it came time for Amy to cut the cord from the corporate world, it was a lot harder for her. But I told her my mantra, which is the money always comes when you need it most. And it does. I think the 23 years we've been working together, I think she has also found that to be true. So, but there were people in our universe that were unsure if we were making the right choice, walking away from, pretty good money. And I think the people that didn't know our relationship as well as other people were like, you're going to work with your sister? Okay. But I think those that knew us well knew that it was the perfect partnership.
All right, very cool, very cool. All right, so I'm going to ask a very pragmatic question, and you can tell me to buzz off if you don't want to. But sometimes when women come together to talk about business on things like podcasts and networking events, we talk about things like love and light and energy and divine feminine essence and all kinds of that, which are lovely, but we sometimes skip over the very important components of actual nuts and bolts business. You guys are sisters, but you are also in business. You have a company, you have corporate governance type things. What kind of things do you have in place to protect both of you and each of you and the business and your families as the business grows? If someday there's something that happens to one of you or the other, or in the event that you decide to implement an exit strategy, what kind of stuff do you guys have in place for that?
Yeah, we kind of have the Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert handshake situation going here. Um, I think that Nancy and I, we obviously do have an LLC, and that, is our kind of corporate agreement that we have with each other. Um, we know that we have each other's back, and our significant others know that we have each other's back. So if anything were to happen to either one of us, that the other would be protected in that way. Um, but we honestly, we split everything 50-50. If a penny comes in, even if it's like, well, I did a little bit more on that, or Nancy did a little bit more on that, everything is split 50-50. There's never a question of anybody getting more money. In fact, for years, we do it a little less now, but we still do it to some degree. We speak in the royal we. Um, when we are doing a front-facing project. So, we used to write for a website and we would say, we wrote this, and people would be like, well, which one of you wrote that? That was really funny. And we would say, we wrote this,
That's
because
funny.
it's not about who's funnier or who's smarter or who's got better ideas. So it's a 50-50 partnership, and anything that happens will always, the other 50% will go to the other person, and any income that comes in, or, if we ever were to sell it and make those billions of dollars selling the Passionistas Project, then we'd split it halfway.
All right, very good, very good. All right, so if there is a business decision that comes up and you guys don't agree, who breaks the tie?
It very, very, very rarely happens. I have to say, like we say, we share a brain. I can probably count on my hand the number of times that there's been a significant disagreement, and I'm kind of guessing because I can't think of a specific episode right now. But Genuinely, the tie gets split by the person who is most passionate about their answer. The person who is like, no, I cannot move forward with that decision. Then the other one relents. But like I said, it really hardly ever happens.
All right. That's really wonderful. And so the conflict management strategy if like you wanted words for it is that you're putting the relationship and the company ahead of the individual opinion. So then you have it's a technique. It's hard to teach people how to do
Yeah.
it, but it's the idea of saying, all right, I hear in a relationship, I hear that's really important to you.
Yeah,
And I will, out of interest in like the family, the business, whatever, let's go with that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So very cool. For people who are listening who are like, that's not real. There is an actual like method to it. Doesn't always work. I'm not going to say that it always
Yeah.
works. All
We
right.
we don't know the method, but it's subconsciously, that's just what we do. That's how we've always lived our lives. So
And my theory for how people come up with these like conflict resolution things is they look at people who do it well and then they write it down. I don't think they go back to an empty room and they're like, what do I think would work? I think that, like the Gottmans and people who do stuff like that, I think they looked at families and couples and they're like, oh, look, that works. Let's document it and give it a name. I don't know that. I can't prove it. I have no data, but I don't imagine. I mean, how weird would it be if somebody was like, let's make a conflict strategy without actually looking at any people? I mean, I suppose people could, honestly. People do weird things. Okay, very good. Thank you for going down that pragmatic question line for me. All right, so very good. So now let's talk specifically about the Passionistas Project. What is it and who is it for?
Yeah, so the main focus of it is the community. So we have an online sisterhood called the Passionistas Project Sisterhood. It's for women and gender non-conforming, non-binary people. And they tend to be people who are solopreneurs or coaches or thought leaders or artists or activists. They're people that are out there doing it on their own. They're not necessarily living the traditional life. Although I will say we actually do have a segment of our community, which are women in business and in traditional structures who feel like they have to go into the office and be really buttoned up, but want to be able to go someplace and say, like, oh my God, this is really hard. I need support. I just need like-minded people who get like everything's not perfect all the time, and I want a space where I can just be myself. So it's a community there's a free membership. There's also a premium level. In the free membership, you can connect with other women. You can share about your business or project or your passions. You can post things in our calendar, events that you're having or workshops that are starting so that you can share that with other people who might be interested in that. We have a women's shopping directory. That's all women-owned businesses and services. So we're encouraging to this microeconomy of women buying from women rather than going to big box stores, but actually coming to the Passionistas Project and shopping from women-owned businesses. And then every month we have meetups, so you can connect with other women. We have workshops, which are our educational opportunities in all three pillars: business development, personal growth, and social impact. And then for our premium members, we also have Passionistas TV, which is our online streaming women's empowerment service. We have our Passionistas podcast network, which is all women hosted podcasts. And then we have a group of women who we call our Power Passionistas, who are our resident experts. And they're really the women who have the Passionistas TV shows. They lead the workshops. They host weekly co-working sessions and monthly coaching sessions for members. And so it's not the type of community where there's a guru and everybody does what that person says. It's a circle of women learning from each other, sharing their skills and supporting each other. And it's even this weekend we had someone post in the sisterhood about how life transforming it has been. She got an opportunity to speak at an event and couldn't afford to go, and it's a really high profile event. It's like the NAACP, but for the Latino Latinx community, and she wasn't going to be able to do it. And another member reached out to her and said, "I will loan you the money so you can get an airplane ticket. You cannot turn this down." And but we have women who are just collaborating and making friendships. Like, oh, I moved to Colorado and I don't know anybody here. Oh my God, I live in that town. Let's have coffee. And so it's just a beautiful space. And then it's also in support of that because it's really about storytelling and letting women tell their stories. We also have the podcast, but we also do anthology books with chapters written by women. And then we help women write their memoirs and their self-help books. So we have a writing process for all of that where we use our interview skills to help draw out the stories so that no one ever has to stare at a blank page and think, I'm not a writer. And we help women tell their stories in that way as well.
All right, very nice. So the through line of the community, the Passionistas Project, is women.
Mhm.
All right. So, and when you guys came up with this idea, there was I mean, I don't know if we were having the niche wars in 2003, but did people come to you and say, and I say this because people come to me and say this, they're like, you need to tighten this down. You need to pick a smaller group of people to talk to.
Yes, that is definitely something we struggle with. It's, we just had a conversation with our business coach a few weeks ago about keywords and SEO, and it's like, okay, our keywords are women. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. So yes, Amy and I are never at a lack of ideas, and people are always trying to rein us in. I would say that we have narrowed in the focus of our community based on a few things, like Amy was saying. Like, we definitely focus on women in marginalized communities, women whose voices don't tend to be heard in other places. So I do think we have narrowed the focus a bit. And I think it's a very specific kind of community. It's very vulnerable, it's very loving, it's very open. And I think people, when once they get there, they realize this is exactly the place I need to be, or they think, I don't get it. This isn't for me. So I think they weed themselves out too. So, but it does make marketing next to impossible, I have to say.
I was just curious
This
because
is,
I get that a lot.
yeah.
People are like, but who? And I'm like, no, but it's general, it's broad. And they're like, no, but you need to choose. And I'm like, I maybe someday. All
We
right,
also, if
so
I can just add to
yes,
that,
of
we
course.
also really focus on women who are in moments of transformation in their life.
Mhm.
And who are a lot of them are either they're leaving corporate jobs or they're empty nesters or they just have been doing something they don't like for a long time and they're finally following that passion project. And so they're looking for other women to support them in doing that. So transformation is a big part of the community. And everybody, I would say the majority, not everybody, but a large majority of the women are really socially conscious.
Mhm.
And even if that issue is women's rights or something, related to a 501(c)(3) that they've started, the women tend to be women who want to give back in some way. Even if they're entrepreneurs, the majority of them have started a business that is in service to other people. So there's a really beautiful socially conscious component to the personality of a passionista that I think is very beautiful and unique.
So I have to ask because it's 2026 and and I decided about a year ago, instead of assuming or letting people guess about this answer, to always ask, is there a faith-based element or is it a secular program?
Amy and I are fairly secular people. We have certain beliefs, we stick to them, but our community is made up from very diverse group of women. We have women that are very religious and spiritual, and we have others that aren't. And so it's not one or the other, it's both, and everybody is very respectful of one another. And there are women who mention God and Jesus in almost every post they make. Um, and if you're the kind of woman that doesn't gravitate towards that, they just skip by it and, you know. and don't interact with that content. But we encourage everyone to, again, follow their passions and be their authentic selves, whatever that is, and to be supportive of everyone and listen to everyone's point of view so that you can learn.
It's a great way to say it. So I would say, so secular, it's like everybody can show up.
Mhm.
And then, if it's non-secular, that, or if it's like got an element of it that it's like a requirement, that is the other way. So I appreciate you answering the question. I just,
Sure.
I feel like these days in conversations and in forward-facing marketing materials, sometimes it's hard to tell
Yeah.
where people are. And so I started asking people, I was like, let's just be really clear. Like, who do
Hmm.
you want? Because it can
Yeah.
go either way, right? It's like, if
Right.
you want a faith-based group, then, that's the ones you want. All right. So very good. Okay. So that is really good. So I'm going to ask you, and Amy stepped away for a second, but she'll come back and she'll add to this when she comes back.
Yes.
As folks who are doing the work of building a community, and I was not alive 100 years ago, but if I had been, I think that community would have maybe looked a little bit differently than it
Absolutely.
does today. I feel like community looks different than it did 10 or 15 years ago. And so I
Uh-huh.
wanted to ask you guys, what are you seeing in what you're building and what people are asking for in community? Because you guys are all online. So like, I'm curious what people are asking for, and what you're seeing that as you're building that people are looking for.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, I think community has changed even the last 5 years. And I think mostly due to COVID. I think that when we started this, community was global, and it was, we keep it online because we have a global community and people connect from all over the world, and we love that. We love that aspect of it. People are asking for more in-person stuff, and I think part of that is the isolation from 2 or 3 years of, being at home. So we do, Amy and I have traveled around the country. Last year we went to 4 different cities and we met different groups of Passionistas in person, which was amazing. Um, and we have yet to do that in Los Angeles. So that is our vow for this year, is to do it here in Los Angeles and start having more in-person groups. We've had women in the community offer to be ambassadors so we can start having in-person events around the country, even if we can't be there, that these women will be our ambassadors. Um, but I think the main thing about our online community is people want authenticity. People want to be able to go someplace where they can be themselves, where they can say, I just got laid off from my job. I'm desperate. I really need help. I can't pay my rent. We have really, really authentic conversations in our community where women just lay it all out there. And people come to their support and their aid, and we help each other. And I think that's what the women in our community are looking for, is the place where they can be their authentic selves, not be judged, not be trolled,
Yep.
and really just feel supported and lifted up.
That's incredible thing to be able to offer. And I would be definitely one of those people I love the advantages of online and the
Mhm.
flexibility of global communities. And I also treasure in-person connection, but I'm really snarky about it. Like, I'm not always willing to drive. Like, sometimes I would be
Me
more
either.
willing to fly to Los Angeles than I would be to drive across town on a Thursday afternoon. It's like a really weird thing. It's
Yeah,
like online, or it has to be worth it for me to go. I don't quite
yeah,
have the perfect words to describe it, but it's like I think that a lot of people are feeling that. It's like, I will
yeah.
go if it's great, if it's worth it for
It's
me to
great.
be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think part of the reason we've been reluctant to have the LA thing is for that reason. It's a very difficult town to have in-person events at because there is constantly a million things going on.
yeah.
So to stand out in the crowd and to make sure you're presenting something that is so unique to people that they'll make the drive across town is difficult. Plus, Amy and I are introverts, so I think
Ah,
part of it, I think part of it is like oh, do we really want to have an event in person? I think there's a reluctance there on our own part, and we're trying to get ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and do it. But but yeah, we do really cherish the online community the most.
It's people who are regular, longtime watchers and listeners of my show hear me say this all the time. I am an extrovert, which I learned during lockdown. If you had talked to me in like 2018, I would have been like, "Oh, I'm an introvert," because I do creative projects, and so I'm happy to work by myself. And then in lockdown, I learned I was like, "Oh no, oh no, no." Where did the people go? where where are the people? What's happened? And if I do Zoom meetings all day long, if everybody is gone, if I go out for like a walk in the afternoon, I would talk to strangers on the street. I'll talk to like inanimate objects. I'm like, "Hey, mailbox, how you doing? How was your day?" So it was like it was a weird discovery of mine. I was like, I was wrong about myself. Look at that. All right, so very good. So in a second, we're going to do the final questions. I want to give you a chance to just tell people who are looking for the Passionistas. We're going to give them a link for the special offer. But when people are listening to this, hearing it, where do you want them to go to find you?
The easiest place to go is thepassionistasproject.com. You go to our website. All of our socials are there, link to the Sisterhood, everything you need.
Very good. All right. So you have a special offer for the audience, which is a free guided journal called The Power Within 30 Days to Uncover Your Story. The value of the product is $27, and there is a link to be able to claim that. That link is in the audio show notes on whatever platform you're listening to. It's in the YouTube show description. And the easiest way to get the links is always, always, always to be a subscriber to the Imperfect Adulting email community, because then it's in your email and you just click on it. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. I want to thank you, Amy and Nancy, for that generous, generous offer. Are you ready to wrap this up with my final 3 questions?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sometimes people get nervous, but these are not nervous. They're very, very silly. Okay. I write these before I talk to people. I'm interested to see what you say with this first one. Name one thing that the two of you fought about when you were kids, like younger than 10 years old. There's got to be something, you guys.
I don't remember what the fight was, but I remember we did the Brady Bunch line down the middle of the room and we couldn't cross to the other person's room. But our room was set up in a way that the door was on one side. So we had this really convoluted path that we masked out with masking tape. But I don't remember what the fight was. I would say probably our biggest fights were like, we would play backgammon for hours on end and get frustrated when the other one won or something, but we really very rarely fought. Our only fights as adults have been when we're traveling and we're hangry.
As it was. Listen, if you're not fighting over backgammon, you're not doing it right, because it's like there's not really, it's like it feels like there's skill, but it's not really skill. It's so much chance. So it's like, it's one of those things. One of those things. All right, what is the longest amount of time that the two of you have gone without talking or texting?
Oh man. I don't know. I'm sure there was a period pre-cell phone,
Yeah.
pre-internet, when I lived in California and you lived in Boston. And when we lived far apart like that, we would talk every Sunday.
Yeah.
So maybe a week,
Okay. Yeah.
but I can't imagine a time where it was more than a week. And now it's literally every day. Like if I don't hear from her in some form of communication every day, I'm like, and even past a certain hour in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, what happened?
Is she in a ditch?
Where's Nancy? Is she okay? Which is, some might call it codependent. We just like to think of it as being really, really close. But yeah, we talk constantly.
No, it's kind of like here. It's kind of, I don't know if you guys have kids, but it's like when the kids are small and the house gets silent, you're like, oh, wait a second. This is not a good sign. Like, what destruction is happening? And so I think it's that. We'll be favorable and avoid the codependent target title for today. All right. Third and
Thank you.
final, share with us your favorite store. So each of you get to answer your favorite store right now for a little bit of retail therapy. It can be an online store. It doesn't have to be, it can be brick and mortar or online, but someplace that you enjoy going to browse and shop. I've stumped you.
I was just at the Century City Mall yesterday with my friend, my dear friend Mark, who's a fashionista. He's not a passionista because he's male, but he's a fashionista. Um, and we were at Zara, and I love the clothing in Zara, and I didn't buy anything, but I made a mental note, like, I'm going to go online and see how much that jacket was.
Right. That's an
So
inspirational story. I
I,
love
I
that.
would say, yeah, I would say that one.
I
Yeah.
would say two things. One is also Mark. Nancy's friend Mark has been selling a lot of his old clothes, and I have a rack in my garage of the jackets and stuff that we're helping him sell. And he's incredibly generous, and he's given us a lot of stuff for free. But I do find myself every once in a while poking through the Mark Wood boutique and going like, well, no one buys that one. So that's one of my favorite places. And the other is going to sound self-serving, and it's really not, but it's the Passionistas Project shopping directory because I just love to see the amazing stuff the women are creating and the services they're offering. But there's lots of just like cool jewelry and accessories and clothes and food. I'm obsessed with like cinnamon buns and things like that. So food and fun stuff like that. So those are my two go-to places right now.
No, it sounds like it's like an online market of sorts, almost like a farmer's market or an artist market. It just, instead of being down the street in a parking lot, is on your website. So I think that's a great answer, even though you run it. So I thank you for sharing it. That's it, Amy and Nancy Harrington. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest today on the show.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much for
having
having
us.
us.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Please subscribe wherever you're listening or watching the show. That helps my stats. A request from the bottom of my indie creator heart is to please tell your friends about the show. That is the real way new people discover it. If you feel motivated, I would love it if you rated the show or wrote a review on whatever platform you are using. Please be sure to head over to imperfectadulting.com and sign up for the email community. I call this the Village. You'll get some free stuff right away, and you'll begin to get the weekly emails that I send. This includes the links for special offers from any guests on the show and cool stuff I put together for the community. There's a lot more going on than just this show, and the only way to find out is to get the emails. Plus, you're busy. You don't have time or desire to follow every single tidbit on social media, and you don't have to because I'm happy to send it to you. If you have a story you'd like to share with the audience, I have an open application for guests. Guess where you'll find it? That's right, on the website and in the emails. And that's a wrap for this episode. Until next time, remember that the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now. I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that just may not mean you're lost. It may mean that you're just on your way. And now, the fine print. The Art of Imperfect Adulting podcast and streaming video show is a copyrighted work created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. The music was written and produced by Todd Thompson at Dharma Bomb Studios. All rights are reserved. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy Stone does not intend to hold myself, herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level. Yeah, it's a little weird for me to talk about myself in the third person, but you get the idea. This is Amy Stone, signing off.